Hello and welcome to a Talmud Israeli production. Today we will review the highlights of this week's course of Daf Yomi study, Masechet Pesachim Daf Kuf Vav through Kuf Yud Bet, 106 to 112. 106. Mi shelo hivdil b'motzei Shabbat, mavdil v'holech b'chol Shabbat kulo. A person who neglected to recite Havdalah upon the conclusion of Shabbat on Saturday night is nonetheless able to say Havdalah later in the week, all week long. However, the Gemara then retracts that and says, Ve'ad kama. How long do you really have to make Havdalah in case you forgot it the first night? Amar Rabbi Zera ad revi'i b'Shabbat. You have until Wednesday. In other words, you have Saturday night, which is the ideal, but then you have Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday during the daytime, but no further. Kuf Zayin, 107. Amar Rabbi Asi, aval matbilu b'nei targima. So the Mishnah had said that on Erev Pesach, you're not supposed to eat in the late afternoon. However, that prohibition on eating applies to grain-based food items, things that fill you up. By contrast, things that do not fill you up, you are allowed to have late in the day on Erev Pesach, and in fact, it may be advisable to have some kind of an hors d'oeuvre appetizer course before sundown in order to prepare your stomach to whet your appetite for the matzah and ritual foods of the evening. So, Rabbi Asi would have minei targima, a variety of food dishes. Rabbi Yitzchak matbil b'yarki. Rabbi Yitzchak would dip in his vegetables in some kind of condiment. Tana nami haki, there's a baraita to this effect. Hashamash matbil b'nei me'ayin, that the waiter would take intestines, meaning meat, and dip those intestines in some kind of a condiment. V'not nalif te harachim, and give it before the guests. V'yafal pisha in rayla davar, and even though there's no biblical proof for this concept, Zeichel Davar, there is nonetheless an allusion to this concept, that you're supposed to plow a furrow in your field, and that way you will not sow your seeds into thorn bushes. So we prepare our stomach by eating certain non-filling items in order to whet our appetite before the Seder. Kufchet, 108. Itmar mishmei Rav Nachman, Yain Sarach Haseba, Mishmei Rav Nachman, Yain Ein Sarach Haseba. It was said in the name of Rav Nachman that drinking wine, the 4 cups on the night of the Seder, requires reclining, Haseba. But another version of Rav Nachman's statement says, does not require Haseba. Well, what is it? Is there a disagreement here? Lo pligi, no, there's no disagreement. That one statement was referring to the Tarte Kasi Kamai, the first 2 cups, cups 1 and 2, and another statement was referring to Tarti Kasi Batrai, cups 3 and 4. But the question is, which pair, the first and the second, or the third and the fourth, requires reclining, leaning on the night of the Seder? So two schools of thought. One school of thought says that the first 2 cups require reclining because that is the moment of liberation. Matchel al-cherut. It's the moment of cherut. Whereas the latter cups, cups 3 and 4, do not require reclining. Maida hava hava. It's old news already. What was. The Seder is already coming and going. The other school of thought says, Adarabba, on the contrary. The first 2 cups do not require Haseba because we're still slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. Only the latter 2 cups require Haseba because at that point we're actually free. And the halacha is, we recline for all 4 cups. Kuf Tet, 109. Tanya, Amru alav Rabbi Akiva, it was said about Rabbi Akiva, Bi'amav lo amar geit lamod bebeit midrash. He never said it's time to leave the yeshiva, to leave the house of study, to go home early, chutz mi'arvei Pesachim arvei Yom Kippurim, except for on Erev Pesach and Erev Yom Kippur. What's so special about those days of the year that you want to cut short this Torah study? In general, cutting short Torah study is not a good idea. So the answer is, Erev Pesach b'shvil tinochot kadei shelo yishnu. On Erev Pesach, we want to make sure the children take a nap in the afternoon so that they won't fall asleep early in the night, rather they'll remain awake for the Seder deep into the night. So we have to take care of the children in the afternoon that they'll be alert for the Seder. And on Erev Yom Kippur, in order to feed your children before the fast begins. So on those 2 days of the year, the yeshiva studies were cut short. Kuf Yud. Oreach ein bo mishum zugot. There is a concept that a person should not drink an even-numbered cup of wine, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, because of demonic forces that are out there in the world which will get you if you've had an even number. However, if you're a guest in somebody's home, even if you have an even number, there's nothing to worry about. The Rashbam explains, because you don't know whether your host will serve you another cup of wine. So every cup you have is independent. Could be your last one, in which case they're just a collection of individual cups. They're not actually paired cups. Kuf Yud Aleph, 111. Hashotem mayim shulim damav brosho. If you drink borrowed water, your blood is on your hands, meaning if something bad happens to you, it's your own fault. But lo amaran elo deshalinu katan. It's only the case if you borrowed it, if a katan borrowed it, a minor. Aval gadol et lon ba. But if a grown-up did, then not a problem. Afilu katan lo amana lo besadeh lo shchichi. And even if it was a minor who supplied the water, this is only true in fields where water is not readily available. Aval be'ir, but in a city, in an urban environment, the shchichi, where other supply of water is available, let lan ba, there's no problem of the demonic forces. Ve'afilu besadeh lo amana lamaya, and even in the field, it's only true about water. But if it's beer and wine, don't worry about it. So, while the Gemara may be referring to demonic forces, this is just as true regarding actual scientific danger to one's health. That water in pre-modern times was not filtrated and could be dangerous. By contrast, wine and beer was comparatively safer to drink. And if you're borrowing water from a miner who's not necessarily reliable to give you clean water, and especially if it's in a field where there's not much available and you'll take whatever you can get, you might get poisoned water, and it could be a real problem for your health. Kuf Yud Bet. Shiva Varim Tziva Rabbi Akiva Yehoshua Bano. 7 things Rabbi Akiva instructed his son Rabbi Yehoshua. And one of those things was, Aseh Shabbatcha Achol V'al Titzarech Labriot. Make your Sabbath into a profane day, it's like a weekday, and don't rely upon charity. Meaning, if you can't afford to buy luxury food items for the Shabbos, then do without it. Don't rely upon the kindness of others in order to enhance your Shabbat experience. Rather, you can afford whatever you can afford, and even if your Shabbat edibles corresponds to what you would have on a weekday, better that than going into debt and relying upon others. Then, he also instructed his son, eat breakfast. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day, as they say. Why? Because in the wintertime, it protects you from the cold, and in the summertime, it protects you from the heat. That having a good breakfast will strengthen you, fortify you, you're ready to take on the challenges of the day. Everyone have a great week.